What's up? This is Sean, Longevity with Bringing Down the Band and the New Old Heads podcast. And today I'm going to do a deeper dive into one of our segments on the New Old Heads from episode 437. The original question was David Banner saying, does the hip-hop union still matter? And that turned into a whole long, in-depth conversation within the clip, but also within us about streaming. Because he essentially said hip-hop in general gave it away via streaming. So let's get into this.
And let's get back into the rundown. So my man David Banner says, don't cry now. It's your fault. And this is in relation to artists. So there's a Drink Champs episode where...
This is crazy. It's like a reaction of a reaction.
Banner was recently speaking about streaming and how he feels rappers gave away hip-hop to the machine. So let's watch this clip and discuss.
Do you think that hip-hop still needs a union?
No, because we already gave hip-hop away. I told y'all a long time ago that streaming was the dumbest that we ever did in history. Dog, we finally started getting pennies. And then you gonna let these motherfuckers give us fractions? We had just learned, bro, I had just started getting $9 an album, dog.
All right. Understood BDS.
Bro, I didn't need but one more album and I would have been a multi-millionaire off music, dog. And I produced myself. Bro, we gave it to tech motherfuckers who don't even care about music, who ain't even cool, dog. Shout out to all my tech motherfuckers who give me a lot of money. Y'all smart, but you ain't cool. Bro, we gave hip-hop away, so don't bitch about it now. Ain't no need for a union now. We gave it away.
Under the guise of independence. Everybody thinks they're independent right now using these tech companies.
Cool. No, I just want to be cool. That's our problem. I want to be paid, dog. I want to be free, dog. I don't care if you think I'm a geek. Said I was crazy, dog. I told them that was the wrong thing to do. The God Box failed because I wouldn't stream my album, dog. It's some stories I can't tell y'all about. When people from distribution companies call me and say, Banner, I need you to help me fight on this streaming. And then they got cut into the equation, and then they didn't call me no more. You know who you are. I'm not gonna put you on Front Street. You still the homie. They cut the right people in. They cut the right artists in, and they sold y'all out. Y'all motherfuckers want to be cool and make TikTok pictures and shit, and you broke. The reason why your motherfucker always ask me, put out an album for what? I'm grown.
Not TikTok pictures.
Making no fuck, because I'm gonna make quality music. I ain't spending the $500,000 like I did on the last God Box album, and y'all giving y'all money to these tech companies. That's stupid. And until we as men, we gangster about dumb shit. But you ain't gangster about your fucking money, about your life, about your culture. I don't play about hip hop. That's why I don't do it no more, because I care about this shit too much. Bro, I gave my whole life to this shit, and this shit was a lie, dog.
That's crazy.
Y'all gave this shit up to them white folks and them tech companies. Now you butt ass hurt. And you wonder why artists who don't give a make so much motherfucking money. If you was selling dope on the corner, you was getting $10 a bag, and the motherfucker said, hey, come and use my dope and let me give you 0.2% a penny. Would you do that shit? Fuck no, you be like, nigga, I kill you. So why you didn't do that for your music? Just because they give one or two dark-skinned black people that y'all happen to like a few dollars, y'all will sell y'all soul for that shit. That's just some hoe shit.
And I think even bigger, it's like, his angle here is very much about hip hop and a hip hop union and what streaming has done to hip hop. But it's much larger than that. Like, there's a direct correlation with this with pretty much society across the board. Consumers love streaming. And the fact that consumers love streaming because of the ease of access and how all this stuff is, the artists are like, well, you know, artists and creatives in general just kind of like, well, since this is the way y'all want it, I guess, you know, I should give y'all what y'all want. And it is essentially just kind of giving it away.
Now, there's a lot to unpack here.
He snapped on that too, by the way.
He absolutely snapped with multiple facts, in my opinion.
He really ain't told not one lie.
I don't think it was nan lie in there. Lon, what did you think about this?
I think I kicked the camera on accident right there. Anyways.
What's your take on it? Is Banner right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely right.
Is there anything I know that's a lot to consume quickly, but is there anything that stood out to you in terms of certain things that he said Because that was kind of a long.
I think the
long clip.
only thing that I would disagree with Banner on would be the fact that it's just like a rap and there's nothing we can do.
Oh, in terms of it's already been given away, so we might as well just forget about it.
Yeah, a union idea is still a good idea because I think you can still bounce back from the streaming model. And we're starting to, we've been seeing that. We've been seeing artists move away from the streaming model. More people become more aware of this. You know, what he's speaking on is the frustration of being early.
True.
And I get that because I am often the person that is early on things. And so I understand that.
That's true.
Yeah. And, you know, like I get it. Like I feel him 100%. But, you know, what people are starting to catch up. And I think that's a cool thing. And it comes through creators like us talking about this stuff, artists learning that the streaming model is what it is, you know, and learning how to break away from that system that is established. I think one thing that I didn't really kind of get into right here that I would even take it a step further, because I feel like I am cooking a little bit right here. A lot of it too is how our entire, now, however you feel about the fact that we live in a capitalist system is one thing, right? I'm pretty much an anti-capitalist. Hate it or love it, it's what it is. And a lot of it comes down to because of how the system of capitalism exploits creatives and views it as such a commodity that it only has value if it's creating value, like monetary value. And I think that the scope of creativity and the scope of what it means to be human lives outside of the scope of value in a capitalist system. And so, you know, I push back against this stuff a lot. Yeah, I would be frustrated if I was him too.
I think
because essentially I am him. I mean, we all are him. Everybody that creates and puts out a product in any type of degree, we are David Banner. We are frustrated. We've talked about it on the show, I think a bazillion times at this point. Like, it is frustrating. It's extremely frustrating.
What stood out to me is, one, I agree with his sentiments across the board in terms of what he said. Like you said, you might have disagreed with that a little bit, but overall, he's spot on. But what stood out to me most is how potent it is for what he's saying, but how passionate he is about what he's saying.
Yeah.
You don't see, and we laugh and joke about our running thing about caring. You don't see people get that frustrated and pissed off about something that they actually care about.
One of our jokes on the show on a recurrent basis is the fact that we like people that care. And we'll just go into joking about, like, you know, how most people don't really care about most things. You know, they only care about the immediate, what's in front of them. But anyways.
It relates to music or art. That's years of frustration to your point. Yeah. Right. And I think it's
just like the thing that I just brought up before this. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm frustrated at the scope of everything.
Yeah.
But I'm not mad at anybody in particular. Okay, so this was a thing I referenced earlier in the show where I talked about my frustration in hip-hop media a little bit, about how, generally speaking, we're seeing a lot of hip-hop media become hyper-vigilant in posting content when there's beef in a battle or something that's good with the algorithm, or something that's going to benefit their algorithm, something that's going to be a high-value prospect, if you will, for what they're doing, but kind of dissipate and disappear when that's not there. So what happens because of that is that certain things in hip hop media get discussed heavily, such as battles and beef, even if it's Kendrick Drake or the Joey and the Ray Vaughn and the back and forth and stuff. But then when other people are dropping music or the more integral pieces of kind of what makes a culture or the music itself, or just kind of gets pushed to the back, all because it's easier for creatives to play off of what's hot in the algorithm. And I just have a fundamental problem with that in general. Even though I understand it, I have a problem with what it creates. Anyways.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just the idea is frustrating overall, yeah. And that's what stood out to me is this man is dead serious.
No, for sure.
And he talked about how, you know, you have to, as men, stand up. I know you use that as an example, but men have to stand up for something as it relates to your art. And the dope idea was hilarious when he did the concept about the $10 versus point. That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
And I just love how passionate he was about it.
I think for a long time too, the reason why people bought into streaming for so long was because so many people were hopeful of the rates being more equitable.
Oh, people, that the artists receive?
Yeah. People were the artists. Yeah, we thought a lot of us were like, well, not, I say us, but I'm just speaking in generals. It was like the market will correct itself, not understanding what the inherent nature of capitalism is. But this we're like, yeah, these companies have our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And one thing that nobody really factored in is it's capitalism. And they don't care about anything but the bottom dollar. Like that's just what it is. Facts. And so like more people are just becoming more aware of that. You know, is it too far gone? I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is too far gone. Maybe David Banner is right, and maybe it is too far gone. You know, and I think it depends on what lens you look at it from. But
yeah. What you think, Jay?
Nothing but the truth here, and this touches on so many things that we have talked about over the past few years.
Yeah,
you know, one of the things where he said, this is where I disagree with him a little bit, but I think the sentiment is there. I think it's very close to what he meant partially, is when he said everybody just wants to be cool. They don't worry about being treated fairly or even getting paid. And I think that is something that kind of echoes something that I've said, is like people would rather be famous than good. Yeah. They'd rather be famous than rich. You know, so that's why it's so easy to say, okay, I'll exploit your metrics and I'll put you on TV and you'll be at the award show and you'll have this and you'll go home to an apartment and a used car. We'll let you rent something, or maybe we'll put you in a house, but at the same time, you owe us for that house. So you're going to get out here and sell as much ass as possible so you can get that money back, because you owe us in the long. We'll make you look good. Yeah, you know, it's just like when a pimp gives one of his hoes a fur coat and a gold chain and tells her, okay, you need to get out here and sell ass so we can get that money. And I need to see a certain return at the end of the night. I'm going to take back my fur coat and my gold chain, because that's what you know. You hear about rappers all the time going broke or talking about how they don't have this or don't have that. Is because, okay, well, you're not going to make any money actually from your music. Yeah. Okay, once those splits happen and or the hate pennies that they give you for when your song is actually streamed.
Not hate pennies.
Okay, you're not going to make any money there. All right, we've set you up in a predatory situation to where you might be in a 360. So even if you do sell an $80 T-shirt, you might get $5 or $6 from that. And then even if you find yourself in a place where you can sell hard tickets for people to come see you, we get a part of that. And we may have advanced you money based on that, but we're going to take all the parking money from those people who bought those hard tickets. You know, we got the partnership with Liquid Death. So when somebody pays $12 for a can of water, you see none of that, and it doesn't go into you paying us back any money. So now all we've done, honestly, with all this tech shit, is we've created new ways for artists to be broke.
Yeah, to be exploited. In the sake of the consumer and ease of access.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And realistically, the bottom dollar, right? Who's eating off of this? Just like David Banner said, who's eating off of this are the tech companies. Who's eating off of this are the label heads, or the major labels that are in bed with the tech companies. And who gets the crumbs at the bottom is always the artists. It's the creatives. It's the people actually putting out the ideas. You know, it's like, not to one compare this to like socialism and capitalism, but the one main difference in modern socialism is the idea of putting ownership and value into that who is creating the labor, that who is creating the work. It's always a little weird to me to see like creatives that are capitalists. It's never usually a creative. It's usually a creative that's also a business person. And that's fine, but it's just the current system and model that we're under in general is such exploitative at the behest of, or the creative, the person that is creating the value, that is creating the thing that people want to consume. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
That's how it's sold. That's how it's sold.
Yeah, facts.
No, I was just gonna say it's crazy because think about it. Not a lot of us have seen the rise, the plateau, and the demise of the music business all in the same life as we have. There's a lot of people that have no idea. Like even if we center focus on hip hop. Okay, there was a point in time where hip hop wasn't really making a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? It made it look like they were making a lot of money, but that didn't happen.
Right.
And our artists have touched on that. And it got to the point where they actually started to make a lot of money, like in real time, like for real. And then right when that happened, on the tail end or not far away from that, started the streaming situation with Napster.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Napster.
pirating.
The pirating,
Yeah.
which was technology based.
That was before streaming. The streaming shit came afterwards.
So to his point with people don't care less about your music and your interests as far as that's concerned. They care about getting a new technology off and eating good from Silicon Valley. They care less about what your album sounds like. At this point, the music focused only on how much can we put out for this consumer, which then turned into the streaming situation that he's talking about. His example about taking dope from somebody and giving your dope to them, and they giving you pennies, micro pennies on a dollar after you done handed your work over, is the best analogy that I've probably ever heard when it comes to music.
And the thing is it's not just music.
No, it's
the
not.
same thing could be said to us.
Yeah.
We put all of our content on a platform that gives us a fraction of the percentage back only if we meet certain thresholds. Not only that, which is kind of crazy, I haven't uploaded anything into my my music YouTube, which is monetized on YouTube, in probably 6 months. And they sent me an email that said, unless you meet these standards within the next month, we're going to demonetize you. So it's like now after 6 months, they say, well, you have to meet this threshold again. Otherwise we'll demonetize you. That's stealing.
Yeah. It's like you're being penalized. Okay. Like we're handing over all of our shit.
Right.
And they're like, okay, we're going to eat off of this regardless. We're going to pay you once it gets to this certain threshold, but you have to get there first.
And the thing is, too, a lot of people that will argue this will say, well, yeah, you signed the terms and services. It's like, yeah, I know, because this is the only thing that exists. They have a monopoly over this. This is the only thing that exists. What are the options here? We build a brand new platform. You know, it's like the arguments that are like pro consumerism on this standpoint are like brain broken.
It's kind of like a bad bar deal, you know what I'm saying, where you didn't set the price too high. So you never get paid off the bar. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing with the music shit and the streaming shit, all of that. Yeah. It kind of goes hand in hand. If you set it, and it's like we're not even setting these. Even with a bar deal, that's something you negotiated at least. Yeah. With this situation, you're not negotiating shit. It's like, this is what it is. You have to get here. You don't get here, we're going to continue to eat, work harder, and maybe you'll get a piece of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's a very big maybe. You know, that's like the whole falsity that there's a meritocracy in this, and if you just work really, really hard, then you're going to be rewarded for it, but that's not really the case. All of this points to the importance of creating something yourself, creating a direct-to-consumer thing for whatever the creative stuff that you're doing here, right? We know when we operate on these platforms, not everybody, but generally speaking, like we, the new old heads, me as a musician, I know when I put my music on these platforms that they are exploiting me. I understand that. My goal is to reduce the amount of exploitation that I am getting to try to get people over to the thing that we are actually creating without using this entity that wants to take a larger percentage of what I'm giving them. Like, it would be one thing if YouTube's like, yeah, cool. Upload your stuff here and we'll pay you 80%. Okay, that seems reasonable. You know what I mean? That seems reasonable. There's reasonable metrics for them doing a service for me. And then there's exploitative metrics because they have the power and they have the market share. And that's where capitalism shows its hands.
So I don't know. It's almost, I can't even add much more to what he said because it's like he hit everything. That could be said about the state of this music business. And for him to even talk about his experience with dropping the God box. So I remember we talked about that. Yeah. And how that was we talked about that on an episode years ago. that was a big deal. He sold a whole package.
The packaging was amazing.
Amazing
For that project.
He spent $500,000 on that situation, and it wasn't successful. Yeah. And this is coming from somebody that came up in the game and was at a point where rappers were eating when he came.
And I would even argue with David Banner that we measure, like, if you're measuring success specifically on monetary, like, he probably lost money on it. And he probably has to look at it from the scope and the lens of, I lost money on this, therefore it is a failure. But what it has also done is it has shown people that there is another way to do things. He was one of the people that were a part of that. Nipsey Hussle was a long time ago as well too, selling those $100 mixtapes and whatever. Or maybe they're $1,000. I forget. Maybe he did both. But like, these are pioneers in the space that are showcasing and telling us that, hey, there are other ways to do this, and almost martyrs in a way. Like, I'm going to take this loss. I'm going to take this major loss, but I'm going to show y'all that you can do this, and I'm going to show you why everything is messed up. And so I would actually argue with David that what he did was successful. It was a personal failure in monetary positions, but it also shows people that, maybe you have to gauge your expectations a little bit different. Maybe you have to put money into it a particular different way, but that is the way. Like, let's not get it twisted. The way that he did that was the way.
Came out, you know what I'm saying? He said he sold his first. Well, he finally got to getting $9 an album, and it's like the carpet got yanked from under him.
But again, he was early.
Yeah,
like he wasn't the earliest adopter of it, but he was one of the early adopters of it, and that's what happens sometimes. Like, he's going up against a machine. Mm-hmm. Like, even our early episodes, we were like, this is not the smart choice right now. Like, without infrastructure set up to encapsulate and grab those people, like, you have to build those super fans and be able to grab them and be able to sell directly to them. We can't just take all of our stuff off of YouTube and be like, yo, come listen to us on Patreon. No, not even Patreon, because that's owned by somebody. We can't say from our own website. Like, we can't do that. Mm-hmm. Although I would say that Patreon is a decent model because we do get to keep most of the money from it, right? It's a lot more equitable than, let's say, a distribution company. It's a lot more equitable than even a direct YouTube. Bandcamp is another one of those places that's very equitable towards the creative, towards the artist. Patreon is as well, but it's still owned elsewhere, so. Or Patreon but would be the thing, but we can't even do that because we're not going to get people. We're not going to, it's the whole exposure thing as well. So it's like, there's no discoverability on those platforms. That's the thing. There's no outside discoverability. That's what a lot of these platforms have. That's why they have like a chokehold on everything, is because they own the entire discoverability. It's like John Wayne. Shouts to John Wayne Makes Beats. He made a video recently kind of highlighting the stuff that I feel like I've been talking about for a long time. He literally feels like he pulled it out of my head and put it on a screen, which is great. But it's like, you have all these discoverability platforms over here where you got high discovery, but you have zero money. Then over here you make a lot of money, a lot of percentage from, the Bandcamp, the Patreons. These are like, over here is like, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. And then the goal is to create something kind of in the middle. And that's kind of what YouTube essentially kind of is in a way. It's kind of like the necessary evil. It does a decent job of both, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's trying to, as much as it can, I feel like it's trying to be creative centric. But that's the problem with these platforms that are over here that are really good for you, is there's no discoverability on them. Like, you can't, people are just scrolling on TikTok. Like, people aren't doing that on Bandcamp. People aren't doing that on Patreon. People aren't doing that on Twitch. You know what I mean? It's not built into the infrastructure. So anyways, like, you have to play that game a little bit. But the
only way to really make it is to partner with these people that are stealing from you.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what I'm saying? Because like, when we talk about even the streamers or podcasts that are really getting it, the platform is paying them. They got a deal on top of whatever streams. You know what I'm saying?
Twitch, well, the Twitch streamers used to. They've kind of deaded all that stuff in a long time.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's been going on, and it's crazy because I actually was listening to Chuck D and Curtis Blount were on the Breakfast Club.
Great interview.
And they were actually discussing the union, Hip Hop Alliance. the situation that stuck out to me is Chuck D said that hip hop came into the game as a covert, like, you know what I'm saying? We were covert as far as implanting and being part of the culture, and even thank Spike Lee for being the person that played Fight the Power over and over and over in that movie to make that more successful than it might have been without that situation. But it's so crazy that it went from covert to corporate. It's like none of that rah-rah strong energy that we felt when we first heard and listened and knew about hip hop. I mean, it's still there, but it's not there to benefit the artist. It's like it's totally gone, you know.
Yeah. And that's what happens when corporate interests get involved, and that's essentially what happened in the 90s.
So,
well, you know,
Good point,
as discouraged as I don't want to say sounds discouraged, but you know, in a way, it's like, yo, I got burnt by this whole situation, you know. But on the other side, we see somebody like Killer Mike be able to do what he wants to do. Now, mind you, his records are on a streaming service, but I know a lot of he cultivated those super fans that went out and bought the vinyl too. And he's able to sell.
He got lucky. This is the one thing that I would say is he hit the perfect storm. Now, granted, when I say luck, I go back to the Seneca quote, which is preparation's an opportunity. You know what I mean? But I don't really think anybody could have foreseen the combination of LP and Killer Mike together being such a cultural moment as it was, you know, and that is what spiraled his Killer Mike's continual growth.
Hard tickets on his, you know, a lot of times on his own. And mind you, he has also the fame that comes from Run the Jewels. I'm not going to discount that either. He has a long track record of putting out the records he wants to put out without thinking about, oh, is this going to sound good in a Doritos commercial? And, you know, will I be able to do this, that, and the third? You know, there's basically no selling of ass when we talk about, you know, Run the Jewels or
at all
Killer Mike as a solo artist. But the thing is, like, when you tell someone, hey, if you do this yourself, you have this incredible piece of work and you want to sell 10,000 CDs and that'll net you like $100,000. And he was like, okay, well, I want my stuff to be on streaming so everybody can hear it. And it's going to take 4 billion people for you to make that same $100,000 to listen to your records. Like I said, I'm making that number up, but it's not that far off. And so when you're talking, but someone would say, I want everyone to hear it. I'd rather be famous than get that $10,000 from my super fans or people I can sell to at my shows.
Yeah, and I think the model realistically for most artists is to take from this, because we do exist in a particular type of place, right? And we can't individually change. We can't just come out and be like, you know what? I don't like this company, Spotify, anymore. Go away. They're going to be here, right? I think the solution is to do both if you're an artist, to whatever extent that you can accept the exploitation, right? So to me, the happy medium is YouTube, super necessary, because YouTube can point to other places. When you have a YouTube page too, you can put links in the description and it will just take you there. If you put a link in the description in like TikTok or Instagram, it opens up another browser, you know what I mean? And then like you have to operate in a completely different type of way, you know, like they try to make it hard for you to leave the apps, you know what I mean? But like even Spotify is a marketing tool. If you look at these streaming platforms as more of marketing tools that maybe you get paid for a little percentage of, then maybe you can justify it a little bit to yourself. I don't personally like the practices that Spotify has, so I stay away from them. But to me, it's YouTube. You know, I utilize Instagram simply because that's where a lot of my friends and my people are. I like TikTok because the discoverability is just off the charts. But again, it's really hard to convert from there, right? But I look at these places as discoverability. But if I would tell anybody, like, what are the things that you absolutely have to do? You have to have a Bandcamp page. You have to have some type of mailing list, some type of place where you can have people that come to you to get your thing directly. That could be a website. And then you have to have some sort of way to get people. It's like a pipeline. You have to grab the discoverability, you have to get them here, and then you have to get them here. And the least amount of steps from here to here, the better. You know what I mean? If you look at streaming as a a marketing tool and only as a marketing tool, then I think it's the same as like if you're a YouTuber and you look at the AdSense as just a byproduct of doing something. It's just like a little bit of money, but the real money is in the product, the thing that you have, your actual physical product. You're buying your CD, buying your vinyl, buying your tape, buying your t-shirt, buying your course, if that's a thing that you want to do. But it's kind of a complete mind shift. That's what you can do in the interim until you get all of your fans in like the same place. Anyways,
it's a weird choice that people have made, but now it is the norm.
But also, I would say it's going to take a conscious and intention from the consumer, because the consumer is really the problem. The consumer wants everything easy, and that includes myself. That includes everybody watching us. We want everything easy and handed to us. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, I think people have been forced to make it too. I think that's the other piece of this that, like, I understand David, and I agree with what he's saying, his frustration, but like, it's not like there's many other choices for many people. It's like you have to play the game. Like you have to, because if you don't, like, not everybody is a David Banner who could be a multimillionaire if from selling records. Like he was from that era. He's been around for a very long time. He was
homeless
when he started out.
Yeah.
But he's cultivated and built something very special.
Yes.
And he's still the top 0.0% of everything. You know what I mean? So
he still exists in what when they talk about in the 1%. He still exists in the 1% of artists who can actually eat from their art. Whether it be the scores he's done, for other movies. Like David Banner's company worked on the remake to Footloose. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? He is very diversified.
Oh, he getting to that. He getting to my point.
So don't get straight here though. Yeah. But this is definitely a moment where I completely lost my train of thought for like a minute, and I had to. It was a nice cut here. But it's like he's putting a lot of onus on the artists.
Yep.
And less on the systems that exist. And I understand that also at the same time, like, people are a part of the system and uphold and push them, but it's a highly exploitative thing that people are a part of too. So I feel like, I get where he's saying, but I still put a little bit more onus. But then again, who's going to take responsibility? They're not going to take responsibility for it. So it needs to be the people that are going to have to do, which is what he's saying. But that's not going to happen. So
do we start to put the onus on the consumer, who is just, now they've been conditioned to think that art, but specifically music in this case, is just not something you spend money on. Unless you're buying tickets to Cowboy Carter.
I think it's very, very simple. It's the corporations. It's the tech companies. That's where the pressure needs to be applied to in general. And it needs to be from the creatives. The creatives need to create that pressure because the consumer will not. Even the consumer side, I think of it as a split personality. The consumer side of the creative is still going to enjoy the way that you can consume things. It's just bad for everything else.
It's a wrap now, man. As far as the consumer is concerned, they could care less as long as they're being entertained.
Yeah.
So like the artist has to figure out another way to actually make their money. And again, that you just brought up Cowboy Carter. The tours is where they make the money, but the product has to be good enough for you to tour to actually make that money. Because you hear about a lot of concerts or artists wanting to go on tour, ended up having to cancel the tour because the tickets aren't selling.
Yep.
So they don't have any money or anything on the back end or any incentive to keep going on, because they're like, we have to spend this much money to go on tour to all these cities, and we're not seeing an ROI based off these tickets that are being sold. So we're just going to have to scrap that idea and refund everybody. Or they got to scale it back down. But that's the only guaranteed way that they're actually going to eat off of their product. Whereas back in the day.
And so what I was getting ready to jump in there before he went deeper into this thought was, it's bigger than that, because again, it goes back to my capitalism viewpoints, because it's like, we're looking at creativity through a financial, from a dollar sign. We're forced to look at creativity and art through a dollar sign perspective. And that's because of the system and the world that we're living in, not necessarily value on our life, but value in reference to the dollar. And I have a fundamental problem with that.
They were getting money off the record sales, and going on tour and selling merch.
That's good. What Kendrick say? How much $1 cost?
But I guess what I would say to that is that works for like a Beyonce, but like the thing is like talent doesn't matter. So it's not about having a good product. It's about being able to sell your product in the avenues where people consume. And if the way that people consume are these platforms, you're kind of forced into being a part of these platforms. And it's like this wicked cycle where unless you are one of these anomalies like a Jay-Z or a Beyonce or a Killer Mike or somebody who has such a large fan base that they can bypass it, or somebody who has spent a lot of time building that grassroots thing, it's completely unavoidable.
Yeah.
Like you can't be like Mick Jenkins has talked about, he recently went direct to consumer.
Yep.
He's a big independent artist, but he's not a big artist.
No.
So like he's making a very big, I don't want to say he's betting on himself a lot.
Risk?
No, it's not a risk.
Not a risk.
I think he's betting on himself.
Okay.
Like he's making a very big bet on himself, which I think is smart for him to do because I think he has that, and I think I have to kind of like highlight that a little bit. The reason why I didn't want to say risk was because you're never really risking anything when you're betting on yourself in this particular type of way. If you are somebody that has something that's valuable and that's necessary, it's never really like a risk. There's a subtle difference between like a risk, because the upside is there. It's like only upside. Your betting on yourself could not give you as much as you need immediately, but it's still kind of like a net positive when you look at it outside of the scope of dollar signs. It's really going against the grain, and there's no real solution for people except for like, I think the artists have to just start removing themselves from these platforms or demand something that is equitable, because the consumers are not going to change. To your point, Terry, the consumers are not going to change. Like even you were mentioning earlier in the show, Jay, about how, like I would have liked to listen to Doechie's record, but it's not on any streaming platform. Mm-hmm. It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what. But that's what I mean, though. Like, it's probably on her YouTube. She probably collects monetization off her YouTube. And I think that's kind of my point, where I'm saying, like, even us as consumers, even as creatives that are familiar with this thing, we're saying, like, I'd really like to listen to Doechie's record, but why didn't she put it out for me to hear? What if it only exists as like on a 45? Like we as consumers are shaped to say, man, like, just give it to me easy, make it easy for me. You know what I mean? And I think that mind shift, the direct to consumer model and idea is how creatives combat corrosive capitalism. If it changes to where artists have more equity in these platforms that do streaming and we get equitable amounts of stuff, then it becomes a little bit different, right? Then we can come back to the table. But the problem is that all this stuff right now is just not equitable at all. And I know that a Spotify person will come up on here and will sit and talk to me and explain to me why it is equitable based upon their business model. And what I will say is, well, then your business model is not correct. It works for the consumer, but it still exploits the creative. Just because it's profitable doesn't mean that it's right. Just because a lot of people like it doesn't mean that it's right. Even because some creatives like it doesn't mean that it's right. Anyways, as opposed to, and granted, it's still YouTube, yeah. but like it's different when you have your music distributed through a distribution platform to YouTube and YouTube Music, as opposed to you uploading it and you collecting monetization. There's a little bit of a difference there.
Right.
It's a content ID claim. It's like, it shifts from like, I don't know the percentages, but it shifts from something like 70-30 to 55-45 or something, depending on how somebody views your content. Not a ton, but there is, but you at least have a little bit of control there. But
yeah. What happens, what I was saying as far as what happens too, they can still eat off of touring and doing their shows. And it's obviously in a much smaller arena and the tickets cost a lot less. But what it does, it turns them into, they have to be an artist 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. They can't duck off like a Kendrick and be like, I'm not doing an album for another 5 to 10 years. You can be Andre 3000 decide I'm gonna play flutes and pianos and not do anything, because he's already hit that threshold to where his artistry pays for itself regardless of what he does. Whereas a lot of the artists that we may be fans of are very good artists, but they haven't hit that threshold to where their artistry is gaining the popular vote. And I think that's why people aspire to be whatever type music they do and add the pop to it in order to gain that freedom. Because otherwise you're constantly having to feed the machine and stay out on the road. These people got families and all kind of stuff.
It's just like from the creative standpoint, from a creator, it's like, all right, you make 4 pieces of content that you don't like, or so that you can have, or I don't know, what's the saying? It's like you make 4 pieces of content you do like that you know that's not going to do well, and then you do one that you just want to do. Actually, I think it's the other way around. It's like 4 pieces of stuff that's going to do good for the algorithm, and then you can do your one that's going to fail. And then it's like, it's the same type of old kind of.
They can't just go out on tour for the summer and be done. They got to tour all year.
Yeah, but I think another piece to this too is like, and this is in reference to, I'd be curious to talk to some people that tour heavily, like a Mega Ran or somebody,
or Talib Kweli
or
Odyssey.
Yeah,
Odyssey.
Like, is the money the same now as it was 10 years ago and 20 years ago? Because Rapper Pooh recently came out and said that because of the Live Nation stuff and the way that these venues are operating, the money's not the same in that either. So it's like there are a lot of hands in artists' pockets right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I brought up the thing about, they're giving people loans against their ticket sales. And, even though they take all the money for parking in $12 cans of water.
Yeah,
Man.
I saw that in an
It's
interview
crazy
somewhere.
out there, bro.
It's very crazy. It makes me think about the conversation we had, which was very similar to this, where I brought up at one point in time, there's just going to be a company where artists go to, and you give them all of your shit, and they pay you either a salary or
Percentage.
a percentage or a monthly whatever. You know what I'm saying? You just work in this place, you're giving us all the music, and we're cutting you know what I'm saying, your pay. This is all ours. You work for us. We're going to release it, but here's your stipend, and we keep the rest of it. It's about to be Hunger Games out here.
I feel like stuff like that I've seen certain entities exist like that in like the royalty-free music spaces a little bit, where essentially tech people just go and just buy music from people and play them, give them a flat rate, and then they just own all the entire royalties of everything.
Yeah.
Scary, bro.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully that was some decent insight for you. But yeah, if you want more conversations like this, I'm going to keep doing. I think I'm going to keep doing these. I'm going to do these. I'm going to do about, I think, based upon time and everything, probably about 3 of them a week. But if you want the full uncut episodes of the New Old Heads, you can get those. So it's, Patreon, become a $5 member to get all that good stuff, or just check out our show that comes out every week. So on newoldheads.com.
Yo, stop freeloading our content. Become a patron. Thank you.